Alright, I got out the M96 to try and run it for a little bit, and it didn't want to start. And I noticed that it appears that the roller bearing here has started to be a little loose on its fastener here for the shaft. And then I also noticed that the adjustment, this is just a little metric cap head, socket head screw. It was also had worked its way out so that there was no play and no clearance between the exhaust valve and the rod here. So I'm gonna need to take this apart, check that roller bearing, and then reassemble this and get better clearance here to make sure that this has a good chance of running. Alright, so this is relatively easy. You can see I removed the muffler. Get the two long screws that hold the valve body and on there. We've got this washer here that provides the sealing between the valve body and the rest of the engine, and then this slides straight out. And aha, there is a flat screwdriver, and that definitely has worked its way loose. Yeah, because this washer here is to help provide backing and take up the slack, because this bearing shouldn't be able to slide left and right like that. So we'll get our tiny screwdriver. Huh? Maybe that washer has compressed since it was last assembled, because that's the screw is tight, so I'm going to guess the washer is starting to wear. So I'm going to have to heat that up and get so that I can probably a half turn on this screw. Heat that up to get the thread locker, and then this is just spinning freely, so I'm going to have to clean that and reassemble it with thread locker to make sure that I get good clearance on it. Alright, well, I got this off. A little bit of heat because it was Loctited on. You can see this is actually a shoulder, smooth with a shoulder on it. So to take up the extra space from this from this O-ring compressing, I've got an M2 flat washer. So I'm gonna get a little Loctite and put the Loctite in from the back side of the hole so that it doesn't end up on the bearing or the bearing surface. And then I'm gonna assemble. And remember, the bearing needs to be on the outside of this flat piece. The inside has the cut for the latch. So I'm going to get that Loctited in place, and then we'll be ready to reinstall this on the engine. Right. With that washer behind the bearing on the exhaust lifter, there's no slop in this bearing side to side from that worn O-ring now, so that's going to provide us with much better operation. And then I turned the screw in well out of the way, for adjusting our valve clearance. And we've got a sealing washer for the back side of our valve box and manifolds. So we need to make sure that goes in place. I didn't unhook the fuel line, but that would make this slightly easier to line up. And I'm trying to peer in the end to make sure that the washer stayed in place and didn't lose its seal. And tighten this evenly. Now with if that washer is in place, oh yeah, we've got compression, so that washer did stay in place. If I open my intake valve, yep, and we got compression. So our sealing washer stayed in place. And now just make sure that our exhaust valve is fully retracted. And this is going to be the challenging part. I'm going to use gonna have to get a small pliers to rotate this and adjust it. So I'm going to carefully adjust that for clearance now. I turned this out and now you can see I've got tiniest bit of slack. I'm going to a little bit more, and a barely visible I would guess that's probably a 10 thousandths, 5 to 10 thousandths of clearance. So with that, I get a tiniest drop of red Loctite, and if I get it right on the edge there, red Loctite will wick in a thread or two on a clean joint like this. It doesn't have to hold much. It's not resisting a lot of forces here, so you can make the adjustment and then apply and get the red Loctite right into the joint, and it will wick in far enough to hold this. Obviously, if it was more important that it stayed put, we'd want to make sure we got more on the thread, but this is just holding that clearance for us, and it's a much bigger danger if we got it slopped all over, or if you put it in before you started adjusting and it's set before you had your clearance set, because then you'd have to get it all, take it all apart and start over. So hopefully with the slack taken out on this roller bearing and the clearance set on this valve, this M96 is going to run